Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. We are live, I think. If people can hear us and see us, it would be great if you could. It would be great if you could just leave a comment. Cool. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes, Ryan, before we start our conversation. It should be
Sure.
an exciting session. So yeah, let's just wait for a couple of minutes. I'm waiting for people to join us through LinkedIn, through YouTube. Hi, Eric. Um, cool. Things should be working fine. I can see us on the different platforms. Cool, Ryan. So I think to begin with, Ryan, can you please briefly introduce yourself? And once you've done that, I'll also speak a bit more about what the listeners, what the listeners can expect from today's session. So yeah, over to you, Ryan. It would be great if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, no problem. So, hi everybody. My name is Ryan Mangan. Um, Obviously, the author of Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop. I currently work for a company called AppCure, which specialises in application packaging and delivery out to workspaces. Ironically, one of them is Azure Virtual Desktop.
Cool. So we'll obviously be talking about your book, Ryan, today, which is Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop, which was published by Packt recently. We have an exciting giveaway as well. So basically, two lucky winners can win a free ebook. And for the first time, I'll also be giving away a paperback of your book to one lucky winner. And the winners will be announced via a raffle that we do at the end of the draw. So to basically participate in the raffle, I encourage everybody to comment hashtag Packt in the comments. And once you've done that, obviously our giveaway tool should be able to acknowledge your entry, and we'll obviously pick and announce a winner live towards the end of the session. Cool. So yeah, and also we'll obviously be answering queries that you may have. So if you have any question about Azure, about AVD, please feel free to obviously post, and I will start asking your questions to Ryan very soon once Ryan answers some of my basic questions to begin with. Cool. So Ryan, the first question that I have for you is that can you please tell us a bit more about your Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop book?
Yeah, sure. So it didn't really. So how it actually started, which was quite interesting, was I was working with Microsoft on producing some publications, short guides on previously known as Windows Virtual Desktop to Azure Virtual Desktop. And essentially, I wrote too much content. I produced quite a little bit of content on the deployment, and it was trying to consolidate it down. And some of the chaps at Microsoft suggested, have you thought about producing this into a bigger book? And then I was involved in designing the content for the exam. So I didn't do the actual questions as such, but the actual structure of the exam itself. And then from that piece of work I did with the exam body for the kind of topics within the exam and what to cover in that. That kind of formed the highlight of how I was going to basically produce the Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop book. So the fundamental structure of the Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop book is based on the exam content, in the sense of the topics which you would be questioned on when you're looking to take the exam. So then from that point, I thought, well, we've got a structure, I've got the content. What else? Who else is going to want to read this book? What value will people get from purchasing this book, or even accessing the content of the book? And then looked at field experience, my experiences from the field, some of the kind of some of the people who, some of the kind of editors, the technical reviewers as well, like Neil McLaughlin, Marcel, and Toby, some of the guys who were involved in that, Marco as well from Microsoft, some of their experiences as well from deploying this live in the field. So it's much more than just an exam guide. It's more about experiences on the field, actual deployments, and what benefits people can get. So the reason why we call it mastering is because it is actually a field book, an aid memoir, a guide which you can take with you to kind of refer to various different times when you're doing these sorts of deployments and things like that.
Sure, makes sense. Um, so Ryan, my next question is that who is the target audience of this book? Who do you feel would benefit the most from the contents of this book?
So when you look at the book and the kind of subjects involved, it does cater for various types. Yes, granted, some of it's technical. There is some pretty pictures as well if you like looking at screenshots. But we'll cover a few. So as I mentioned, like a field technical aid, an exam guide. People who are looking to move from on-premises workspace solutions into Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop's seen a significant growth over the last couple of years. I think it's, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but around it's about 60% from what I've been told in growth year on year. So a lot of organizations are now looking at cloud economics and looking at the benefits of moving to cloud technologies. And it makes sense, right? Do you really want to go out and spend lots of money on physical equipment up front, or do you want to take advantage of a pay-as-you-consume model? So if you are a leader in the IT industry, or you are technical, or you are in various different areas, project management, the book has something for everybody in the sense that if you are putting these projects together, there's areas of that book which will help everybody in them particular job roles.
Cool, makes sense. We have a first question from Eric. Eric, I think me and Ryan were just discussing about this before we started the question. So his question, Ryan, is that even though the book came out a few months ago, can you name a few things that you would include now?
Yeah, so that's a good question as well. So interestingly, the book was aimed to be released, in November, December time last year, but it was released in March, and that was because Microsoft were releasing new features, which were previews we wanted to kind of cover. So if I was to add new things in now, things like troubleshooting, more in-depth troubleshooting, and maybe a specific topic onto that now in more granular detail. There is troubleshooting in the book, but it's split between all the different sections rather than in my opinion, and really now should be grouped into one section people can jump to straight away. But also all the preview stuff that should be updated now because that's moved into kind of general release into that platform. If that helps.
Yeah, makes sense, Ryan. So Ryan, can you tell us a bit more about the AZ 140 exam? How do you think people should prepare for it? And what are some of the most important outcomes of somebody getting that exam successful then?
So before we even look at Azure Virtual Desktop, it does help to have some experience in Azure. So maybe look at the 104 exam first, perhaps, or the fundamentals, just to have a bit of information, a bit of experience in Azure before you move on to this, because AVD is various different components in Azure, and you'll need to understand them first before you move on to mastering that. But looking at the skills for Azure Virtual Desktop, the first one, which is the big part of the exam, is 40 to 45% is on planning and implementing Azure Virtual Desktop. So that is almost 50%, or it's 45, but you're rounding up to 50% of the exam. Then you look at identity and security is 15 to 20%. So there's a good, quarter of the exam if you broke it into that sense for that element. And then you've got 20 to 25 in, user and apps, and then 10 to 15 in monitoring. So when you're looking at the kind of sections, you need to spend a lot of time on the implementation and design of the environment, and then security, identity, and user and apps are the kind of the other bulk of it. The monitoring and maintenance is pretty low, from a question, but obviously I suppose that's more about field experience and what things can go wrong. So the effort should be focused on the kind of implementation, design, and the security around that.
And can you tell us a bit more about the actual exam itself, Ryan? So when does it happen? What kind of prerequisites are there for the exam, or anything to basically help people understand the exam better and to kind of very quickly evaluate if they are even ready for an exam like that?
So there's 50, 60 questions with the exam in general, and they're asking things about FS Logic's profile containers. So if you've never touched FS Logic's profile containers, you're going to get questions on that. So you need to make sure you understand about that. MSIX app attach is another one you're going to get questions on. Storage, Azure files, Azure NetApp files. If you don't have these kind of cracked, then obviously you're going to make the experience much harder to kind of take the exam. In terms of preparing for the exam, you can do you can kind of go and do the kind of mock purchase exams, which Microsoft also offer on their website. And also Microsoft has a study guide, which is found on the main website when you're looking at the exam itself. So if you go to the exam section, configuring and operating Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop on the Microsoft Learn website, you will see all of the information in there and some of the kind of recommendations for taking a practice exam. However, if you refer to the book as well, in each section, each chapter of the book, there is some kind of little quick fire questions and answers on the particular topics of the exam. And right at the end of the book as well, there's a full-blown practice exam for you to kind of test your knowledge and ready for that exam.
Yeah. So I think similar to my question, Eric just asked that if there is a prerequisite to take the AZ-140 AVD exam, what would you have to say about that, Ryan? Do you think there is a prerequisite?
Well, it's classed as a specialist exam, so you don't get like a administrator or expert kind of recognition. You get specialist in Azure Virtual Desktop. But if I was to put my business head on, I would say that you should be considering doing the fundamentals for Azure as a mandatory, and then also looking at the Azure Administrator exam as well. If you crack them two, then taking the AZ-140 exam would be a little bit more plain sailing because you understand the fundamental basics behind Azure first.
Yeah, sounds interesting. How long do you think people need to prepare for before even considering to attempt the exam, Ryan? Like, is it like a exhaustive process, or is it something people kind of like do on the job, so they should kind of like know already?
So on the job will probably give you a very strong foundation for the day-to-day stuff, but specific questions within the exam. How Microsoft do their exams now, they're focused on testing practical. They don't test theoretical knowledge anymore. It's focused on practical. So a lot of the questions are geared about the experiences you would have as an admin or a consultant doing the day-to-day, right? So if you are doing the day-to-day, again, it's a massive advantage because it's going to be fresh in your head and you will have probably seen some of the scenarios which they're going to be testing you on. For example, in another exam, like the Windows 10 exams previously, they asked you a question around networking. And it said, we can ping the machine, but we can't get an IP4 address. And the test was that you've got to check the network card. And it's a very common practical test that the reason why you're seeing that is because the network card for IP4 has been disabled. And it's the same sort of thing. They're going to test you on whether you actually know how to configure that rather than the theoretical numbers and quantities of something.
Fair enough, Ryan. Moving on to my next question, Ryan. So can you please talk to me about the top 3 or the top 5 essential topics that you think people should know to design and manage AVD?
So in terms of the exam, we'll refer to, should know versus what the exam questions you on is. It depends on the customer and the environment, right? So some customers might not even touch some of the areas. However, the exam will want you to kind of make sure that you understand and know them. So the ones I really have, which is fundamental, is remote desktop services was Microsoft's virtual desktop environment experience solution. Previously known as terminal services, that's now moved over to Windows Virtual Desktop, now Azure Virtual Desktop. So Microsoft made an acquisition of something called FSLogix, which is the kind of core user profile for Azure Virtual Desktop is FSLogix profile containers. So because that underpins user identities and the profile for a user logging onto that service, implementing and managing FSLogix profile containers is a very important chapter, because if you don't know how to configure and use that technology, then you're not going to be able to get users their profiles within that environment. The second one I've got for you is creating and managing session host images. It's one of my favorite because that's where all the action happens. That is the desktop people get. The applications are going to be installed onto there. The experience, the optimization, the look and feel for the user, the UI of what the user gets. One of the topics which I'm slightly biased on is MSIX app attach, the dynamic application delivery. That's a favorite because that's obviously the topic applications are close to my heart in terms of what I do on a day-to-day and how to kind of solve the endemic issue of applications in the industry. You then also got configuring user experience, some of the advanced features like AVD Teams redirect and things like that, multimedia redirect, and then configuring apps on the session. So there's the 5. I'll also note as well that in these topics I mentioned, for example, creating and managing images, there has been comments in the past about there's no troubleshooting. The troubleshooting sections are bedded into these chapters, like creating and managing session notes right at the end where it says troubleshooting, and then the same again for like configuring user experience. The troubleshooting's right at the end of that particular chapter. And the feedback we discussed previously, Shailesh, as well, was that it'd be better if it was in one next time, because then you'd have to look around.
Yeah, makes sense, Ryan. So Ryan, we've also spoken a bit about how Microsoft seems to be heavily investing in AVD. Now that's obviously like very like it's great to know. My question as an outsider obviously is that what makes AVD so special? Like why do you think Microsoft is focusing on AVD so much, and what are some of the elements which is driving its growth right now?
Well, see, there's multiple different cloud players in the market today. Microsoft own their own IP. You know, Windows is Microsoft's, right? Everybody I know through my childhood have always been Microsoft Windows. You know, I grew up on Microsoft Office. I'm sure everybody else is, right? When you're doing your degrees, university education, or whatever, it's Microsoft Office. Not many people use LibreOffice, right? It's just a fundamental fact. So there's this household brand name which comes with it, like Domestos. You know, people know it, use it. But then people are also looking at, the features, and Microsoft has made massive strides in the world of Azure Virtual Desktop, which competes with other workspace solutions out there. I don't want to mention the other names today, but Microsoft has had massive strides and done a lot of innovation on there. And some of the technology partners with Microsoft have built on top of their platform to enhance it even further. So it's now a premier solution, and if you configure it and get it right, it's an optimal, cost-effective solution for these migration processes. And moving from problematic remote desktop services solutions on premises or other workspace solutions to Azure Virtual Desktop, it makes commercial sense, from a cloud economics perspective, a cloud first strategy, but also from a management, because Microsoft are taking all of the physical pain. And the big one is, if you are already an Azure customer, why would you want to go to another platform? You wouldn't. You'd want to keep all your eggs in that kind of particular area. Training, certification, all of this are factors which a business makes a decision on.
Yeah, true. Let's take the next question from one of our listeners, Vignesh. So he's saying, would you say going forward, will the organization prefer AVD over Citrix solutions?
So again, Citrix is a household brand. There's a lot of organizations out there, a lot of enterprise out there which have Citrix. Citrix integrates and can sit on top of AVD as well. So I'm not going to discredit Citrix in any way, or I'm going to have anything to say remotely negative about it, because it is a good technology. And it's up to them organizations in the enterprise to decide them features which meet the profile for their delivery. Okay. If you want to go native AVD, that's great. A lot of organizations are using the likes of Nerdio and other management tools to improve cost optimization improvement. And then others are using Citrix or VMware or Parallels RAS or the NetApp Spot PC to kind of enhance and accelerate kind of experience within the platform. But to access Windows 10, Windows 11 multi-session, you need to be on AVD. So all of these vendors are going to be basically becoming more aggregators and enhancing that AVD experience. You're not going to see this separate competition anymore, because it's not going to happen. It's going to be who builds a better solution on top of AVD to provide that experience which customers want. So I call it flavors of ice cream. And someone wise recently told me about, if you like chocolate and chocolate vanilla, then go and get that. There's no right answer. It's which you prefer.
Okay. And do you think probably in the next edition, you may consider including the pros and cons of each one of them? Or is it something that you would just want to steer clear from and like let the audience kind of make a decision?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking about some of the advantages of the others. And I know Microsoft and I have already put publications on Citrix and VMware. They've already been done. They're already publicized. And the message is very clear that better together, So if you've already invested in the training for Citrix and the platforms, you wouldn't want to down tools. Also, some of the features and the security, which, like Citrix the file sharing technologies, are very, very strong players in the market. So you wouldn't want to kind of wash your hands a bit. You'd want to kind of keep that and just build on what you've already got. As simple as that, really. So it would make sense to kind of go into more detail. But when we talk about mastering Azure Virtual Desktop, the initial concept was we got to master the foundations first.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. So in the book, Ryan, so obviously it's a big book. It's around just over 700 pages. And there are 21 chapters in the book, Ryan. So if I have to ask you to pick any one chapter that's your favorite, perhaps close to your heart, which one would that be and why?
I suppose that my favorite, and people will be probably slightly surprised that they would expect me to say mosaic sabotage, but it's not. It's creating and managing session host images, and that's because, like I said earlier on, that's where all the action happens. Creating the template, uploading it into Gallery, and then redistributing that out. Optimizations. That's one of my favorite. There's that much content. I can't possibly say that I only have one favorite, but if I was to call one out on this session, then that would be the one I'd call out. Is like the knowledge and the information in there about optimization of the image, the impact and the benefits of that, understanding sizing, different Azure SKUs. There's a lot of information to digest, and if you do get that chapter and read that information, it will only improve your experience with the customers or your users with that platform. For example, if you size it incorrectly, you'll have poor performance. If you follow the information which is provided in the book, you'll have a better result.
Okay, cool. So we have quite a long question, a couple of questions actually from a listener, Fanny. I'm going to give you some time to obviously go through it, but I'm going to read it out for the rest of our listeners. So he says that FS logic space, can we have multiple sessions write to the share at the same time? I know it's possible. However, is it okay to have this enabled in a prod environment? On the FS logic side, is it a good practice to separate out M365 and user profile containers? So I think let us try and answer that first, Ryan, and then we can move on to his second question.
Yeah, sure. So the FS logic piece, can we have multiple sessions write to the share at the same time? Well, it's not a typical thing. It can be configured, but the typical would be, a single. Well, why would you need multiple sessions at one time unless you're using remote apps? So my opinion, just looking at this, is there must be a real technical need to do that specific. But in most cases, I would avoid doing that. Is it also possible, however, to enable prod environment? On the FSH side, is it good practice to separate the Microsoft 365 and user profiles? That's a divided question, separating out user profile containers and the Microsoft 365 containers. Today, what is the real benefit of doing that? Why do you not want all of your Microsoft 365 Outlook and stuff in the same profile container? The only time you would do that is because of performance issues or due to caches and all the rest of it. From a simplicity perspective, I would always say, where possible, try and keep it all simple. Simplicity always wins. Why would you want to do both? Unless there's a real specific reason for that. So on most organizations, I would not see an M365 container and a profile container. I'd just see a profile container. Okay. And then the second bit, can we consider pooled host, pool images work the same way as it in a Citrix environment? I don't fully understand what that means, in the sense that pooled host imaging, there's two ways of doing it. One way is you spin up a virtual machine using a premium disk. The second way is using inferior disks, which basically is a cache on the host in Azure, which basically when you stop that, it disappears. So it's like link clones as such. So as soon as you stop the VM, it will basically go back, it reset to its original state. That's using inferior disks. But you can use premium disks, which obviously will remain the same during that process.
Cool. All right. I hope that answers your question, Fanny. But yeah, I mean, if you have any further questions for Ryan, definitely reach out to him on LinkedIn, and I think you guys can discuss it offline. There's another question from Eric, Ryan. So he's asking, does the book cover the cost aspect of running AVD and the cost optimization tricks?
Yeah, so throughout the book, there is tips and tricks on how to do that. One of them was, and it's a really good one, is the same SKU. So there's AMD and there's Intel chipsets. The AMD is AS and the Intel is DS. They're the same price, but from actual real world research which I carried out, which is in the book as well, I put the research in the book, it shows that AMD chipsets offers a good 20-30% improvement in performance. So yeah, there's a cost optimization based on sizing correctly, but then also using automation like scheduling, sizing, scaling up and scaling down. The scaling plans which Microsoft released, announced in public preview last year, are in there. Yeah, so there's quite a few in there. If you really want to do advanced cost optimization, you either need to write your own scripts to do this and manage the environment via scripting, or use third-party tools like Nerdio, Hydra, and other platforms.
Cool. What about the first bit of his question, Ryan? So the cost aspect of running AVD, is that something that we probably speak about in the book? And I'm also wondering, like, I mean, why is that why is that a discussion topic? Like, is it something that people worry about, or is it just something that we need to be aware of?
So I don't think any finance director or anybody in finance, when running cloud services or subscription services, likes the word subscription. They all have a phobia of it because obviously it can grow and grow and grow. If an AVD environment isn't deployed and sized correctly, yes, you will have a residual wastage of cost. And it does talk about certain aspects of that. But for us to kind of go through and talk about the advanced cost analysis of that's quite a big topic. We talk about using Azure Calculator and all these different kind of bits around there, but it's a separate topic in itself, which, to be fair, has been covered by quite a few other people. But it was a risky topic to get into because it all depends on what you do.
Makes sense. So Ryan, I think with regard to the best practices and the tips and tricks in the book, I think on Amazon, under the key features, one of the key features which is listed is explore best practices and expert tips on how to set up Azure Virtual Desktop. Can you talk to us a bit about what these best practices are, and if you have any tips that you may probably want to share, then yeah, please feel free to pick out and share some tips and tricks as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the best practices, there's quite a few different areas we can go at. But one of the interesting things is as well, if you are sysprepping your VMs in Azure, if you don't sysprep with the /VM mode enabled, effectively when you boot them up for the first time into a new host pool, you could be waiting a good 20 minutes to an hour for the kind of initial setup of that. So it's very important that when you sysprep and you use the VM mode switch with sysprep, otherwise you will add an additional amount of time which could prevent you from getting on or getting users on. So if you do roll out a new pool of desktops, then there's an issue there. Optimization, there's a massive section of best practice, before and after as well, looking at that. So if you don't optimize, you have more threads and processes running on the operating system. If you do optimize, you can get more users on a multi-session environment and the user experience is much better. Disk sizing as well, making sure you size the right size of disk using IOPS and all that kind of jazz. And then also, the CPUs as well. Best practice in design, there's best practice in MSX app attach, being one of the kind of areas of expertise in MSX app attach. I believe the book covers probably the most comprehensive content for that particular topic as well. And one of my favorites topics, especially for people wanting to get involved in Azure Virtual Desktop, is the Getting Started wizard. The quickest way to deploy an Azure Virtual Desktop environment is using the Getting Started wizard, and I urge everybody to do that. I think it's chapter 19. And you literally can spin up an environment from 8 to 20 minutes using that.
Cool. I think Eric just has a comment, I think, after you addressed his previous question. So he just said that, yeah, the other day I was looking at CPUs, D series, V3, cost performance ratio, made me think why DV3 is default.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have control over how Microsoft set their ball, but yeah, I agree. Really, I would like to see when you're deploying AVD that the AMD EPYC chipsets are default. That's the standard, but unfortunately they're not. Plus, also this information I obtained was through my own research. It wasn't, abundantly clear from the get-go.
Yeah, makes sense. So moving on, Ryan, I was going through the product information on Amazon, and I think a couple of times I read words like diagnose the issue, disaster recovery. So can you talk to us a bit about what kind of issues do people working with AVD may probably most frequently come up with, and what do you think is the best approach to kind of overcome those issues, or I think even first like diagnose those issues?
Yeah, so well, the biggest issue I've actually seen, which is quite funny, really, is people not putting the username and password in the client side, and they're saying, but it doesn't work, I can't connect, the environment doesn't work, So it's one of the biggest comments I hear from some of the large enterprises deploying AVD, that the services desk gets an abundance of tickets about people not being able to log in. And quite interestingly, the issue isn't AVD. It's actually they just put in the wrong credentials, they forgot them or whatever. However, one of the really good ways, and one of my favorite ways to do this, is in the Azure Monitor and also in the AVD URL of the product, you can see insights. So there's an AVD Insights tool which allows you to have an holistic view of these various different issues. So you can look at connections and it can tell you why the connection failed. You can look at the hosts themselves, performance. Has this full kind of spectrum of different bits of information you can use to kind of troubleshoot the problems which may occur. And Microsoft have done a very good job of kind of reporting that. What you can also do as well is, icing on the cake. If you want to kind of get your hands a little bit more dirty, you can use the read-only language called Custo and basically create your own scripting and queries to kind of pull certain bits of information for your own diagnostics. So it's a very malleable, flexible platform. And, some of these vendors out there, third-party tools, have taken advantage of building on top. So you internally can build your own services and monitoring and capabilities, or you can turn to these third parties to do that. But one of the areas to troubleshoot would be to use the Insights tool within the Azure Monitor. And then another interesting one is user profiles. One of the most common I've seen as well is filling up the user profile disk. So setting it to a certain size, and then it gets filled up. And then obviously you need to kind of export all of the data, move it on. But that's to do with making sure you size the environment correctly and understand whether you're caching Office 365 Outlook mailboxes and on so and so forth. So I could probably spend probably about four days talking about this, Shailesh. So I'll avoid that.
Yeah, yeah, please do. But yeah, I think, thank you so much for explaining those, Ryan. I'm not sure, like, I'm assuming that obviously people who are like new to AVD, they may kind of come up with more challenges, more issues. In the book, Ryan, chapter number 20, you do speak about Microsoft and the community resources. Can you talk to me a bit about what kind of community exists around AVD, or if Microsoft themselves are like, trying to establish a community around it? Because I think we have increasingly seen that the adoption of something new becomes a lot more fast, if I may call it so, but a lot more fruitful rather if there is a community of people who are obviously representing that tech or representing a particular tool. And if there is that troubleshooting kind of environment going on, because obviously, like, because something is new in the market, you do expect a lot of users to try, and some may fail, some may succeed. But I think overcoming those problems and having a platform where they can troubleshoot with experts is extremely important. So yeah, what do you think about that kind of a setup? Is Microsoft kind of like trying to have such kind of community support for AVD? And I know that you yourself are having a LinkedIn group which is quite active around the book. So yes, please tell us a bit more about that.
So, I mean, it's not Microsoft, first of all. I don't want to give Microsoft credit for something which is more community-led. It's individuals within the community and also sparing on other people in the industry to kind of go out and create content as well. So the Windows Virtual Desktop User Group was originally actually founded by Neil McLaughlin, who is a technical reviewer of the book. And it was interesting to watch this. So during the height of COVID, it was great to see how this little community kind of project grew and grew and grew, and then there were spin-offs in all these different countries of the now known as the AVD user group for each country. UK, Belgium, US, all over the place. I mean, I've never seen so many. It was amazing. But there's a lot of individuals out there who are we've kind of transitioned from VMware or Citrix, Microsoft RDS into the AVD space, and spend a lot of time and energy putting content together for others, creating educational resources like Shabazz Dar. He is also a Packet author as well. He spends a lot of time doing podcasts, content in general, and it's a good resource to look at because it kind of shouts out some of the really interesting stuff people have been doing and some of the problems and troubleshooting. It's impossible to put everything in a book, right? I mean, the content has to be carved up at some point, and the book can only be a certain size. So for me to possibly produce all the content on AVD, we'd probably need thousands of pages. So one of the really good ideas I thought was to give some recognition back to the community because they deserve it, because this is done by them and in their own time, their own effort. There's no benefit for them doing it personally, apart from using it as an aid member themselves, is that everybody can refer to it. So I wanted to make sure I did some shout outs. I couldn't cover everybody in the book again, but as many as I could were put in there. So in the back of the book, if you go to resources and Microsoft Learn, you'll see a lot of community shout outs. You'll also see some cool vendors. So if you are working with Azure Virtual Desktop, you will see some of the vendors which you should look at if you're not already on using to kind of help you with your migrations and continual improvements to the product.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So Ryan, I think we are coming towards the end of the session. One of the questions which I have finally is that the book obviously contains foreword by Jim Moyle, who's a senior program manager at AVD. So yeah, that's obviously it's great to have somebody like him associated with the book, emphasizing the importance of the book, emphasizing the quality of the content that you've obviously written. So what kind of relationship do you share with Jim, and how did you go about having him write the foreword?
So interestingly, Jim was a part of the FS Logics team before acquisition and came up to Microsoft with the acquisition. So Jim's been around in this space from day one of the Windows Virtual Desktop, then Azure Virtual Desktop kind of product. So if anybody knows more about it, it's Jim. He's one of the kind of, and I'm not just discrediting anybody else, by the way, Microsoft, let's just be very clear. But obviously we're talking about Jim here. And obviously through my work as well, through AppCure and doing the application side of things, I've further kind of got to know Jim also through community work and presentations and sessions and events. I've bumped into Jim many, many times. And I had a chat. We spoke about what we were doing, and he read the book and he contributed to some of the content of it, and he really liked it, which is great. And it's always good to get feedback from people who've been in the industry for a very long time, and obviously at that level. So it was obviously a pat on the back as well. But Jim is the go-to guy now for MSI's AppAttach as well. So he runs the product. He's a product manager for that. So you'll see more and more interesting things, hopefully, in the next couple of years on that topic. And if you go to, I think it's in chapter 14, you'll find out a lot of the stuff I've done on AppAttach in that chapter too.
Cool. Sounds good, Ryan. Good to know. So Ryan, the last question I have before we move on to the raffle is that what does the next year look like for you in terms of writing more content? Is there anything in particular which is coming up which you feel excited about, which you would probably want to book on? Or how soon do you think we can see the second edition of Mastering AVD? So yeah, I mean, what does your publishing pipeline do you think look like, or you would probably want it to look like in the next few months?
So I'll first start with some of the events I'm running in the next couple of months. That's probably a good starting point. And we'll talk. So unfortunately, publishing's on hold while I do my community travels over the next couple of months. So I'm at the AVD Azure Virtual Desktop Tech Fest in Schiphol in Holland on the 1st of September, a big AVD event. So if anybody is in Europe, it's definitely worthwhile to get a ticket and get yourself over to Schiphol for the day to learn everything you could possibly imagine about Azure Virtual Desktop. And there's lots of people, vendors all around this space going there. And I'll be presenting the chapter on images and image creation. So it'd be worthwhile if you want to kind of find out more about that particular topic. I'll be there doing that. There's the Workspace Ninja event in Switzerland, and I think it's the 12th to the 14th of September, which is talking about applications and delivering applications into the workspace. If you can be around for that. And then in the end of September, there's Netherlands Experts Live, where I'm talking about AVD again there. Also in September, there's 3 sessions being published by Azure Back to School, which are MSIX AppAttach Masterclass, migrating from remote desktop services to Azure Virtual Desktop, and then also making sure you correctly size an Azure Virtual Desktop environment and CPUs in there as well. So there's lots of sessions as you come out. I think 12 in total.
Yeah.
Sarish, we should coming out. But yeah, and there's also a session with Parallels Raz on the 5th of September, I think it is, and the 19th of September on the book again, where we're going to be talking about specific implementations as well. Then on to the book. There might be a second edition of the book, which we'll consider. And there's also potentially another book as well in development, which might pop out next year as well. But I've got to get through all these sessions and events first in September. Yeah. And then we'll crack on with all the other good stuff in the winter months.
Yeah, sounds good, Ryan. So let's proceed with the raffle, Ryan. I think the most exciting part. We have a few entries, so I think I'm very keen to do the draw for the paperback first. So we have a few entries. Let me just share my screen. Hold on. And hold on. Okay. So I'm assuming people can see this. So I'm just going to do the draw first for the paperback. Okay. Cool. Congratulations, Vignesh. So yes, I will obviously need your details, Vignesh. I'll get in touch with you through LinkedIn. So yes, I will have your paperback sent out to you. With regards to the ebooks, let's do that now, and let's see who wins. So there are 2 ebooks that we are giving away. So yeah, let's see who wins. Oh, it's Vignesh again, so I need to draw again. Cool. Eric, congratulations. I'm glad you won because of the great questions which you asked, multiple great questions that you asked during the event. So yes, please do share your email address with me through LinkedIn, and you should have your ebook hopefully soon. I'll try to do it today itself if I get your email address. And finally, the other winner for the ebook. Okay, I'm just going to keep drawing again till we see a new name. Okay, I'm probably gonna just screen through the people who participated in the raffle. I cannot see one name which came on LinkedIn. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna run the raffle again offline for all the people who participated, and then the name of the second ebook winner, I can announce that as a comment to the post, okay? But yeah, for now, congratulations, Vignesh and Eric. It was obviously great having you guys. Yeah, it was great having you guys obviously participate in the session, and thank you for all your questions for Ryan. So Ryan, just a second, okay? Stop sharing. I think it's fine. There you go. Cool. So Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Great session, great questions asked by some of the listeners. Any parting thoughts that you may want to share with the listeners?
No, well, thank you very much for attending the session, and yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions in the community. Stay tuned for all of my speaking events and stuff. I'll be publishing them on the LinkedIn page, Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop, also through my LinkedIn as well. And yeah, stay tuned, and hopefully you'll see something in the new year as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ryan. Once again, for everybody who's listening, Ryan's book is obviously published already. You can easily find it through Amazon. You can also find it on our Packt website. And as Ryan said, like, he is going to be a part of several events in September. So do follow him on LinkedIn so that you can get these updates. Thank you so much, everyone, once again. And yes, you have a great rest of your days and the rest of the week. Thank you so much. Bye, Ryan.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.